And it's also fitting to acknowledge that the original people were good stewards of the land and to give thanks to them. At Renison University College, we acknowledge the land, but we also feel that it is equally important to take active steps towards reconciliation. So I'm just going to tell you how we're doing that. So we're doing that by reviewing our history, acknowledging our story, and reviewing our name and our reconciliation efforts. We're going to continue to do this work in partnership with Indigenous people. I also want to give thanks to this land that we're on and to acknowledge that the original people are and were good stewards of the land. And to honor their commitment to the land, I also pledge to be a good steward of the land. Thank you.
Good evening, Renison friends. What a delight it is to welcome you here to this Founders Day celebration on the occasion of the 65th anniversary of Renison University College. What a distance we have journeyed from the 60th anniversary, our gala year right before the pandemic, a new day and a new way here at Renison. Tonight's event is really about stories, the stories of where we come from, of who we have been, the stories of who we are in this present, and the stories that we can imagine together. Who might we become 65 years on into the story? When I was pursuing my doctoral studies in the history of Christianity at U of T, a conflict broke out in my doctoral committee. Now, the conflict wasn't with me. It was the professors between each other. All doctoral students studying history have to really struggle with the definition of what is history. Well, here I had on one hand in my committee, Professor Michael Sheehan. He was a medievalist, and he was absolutely clear that history was about a distant past that we could document and understand. That was history for him. I wanted to do the 20th century. That was journalism for him, not history. On the other hand was my professor, Thomas McIntyre. He had been educated by Marxist theory. He followed a Marxian model of history. So he argued that history wasn't static at all. It was not about a documented past only to be examined and understood as something past, but rather it was a dialectical relationship, an engagement between the past, the present, and the future. History in the present and the future? For him, history was a living thing because it continued on in each generation, seeds of the past, born and carried forward in new ways by new hearts and new minds. As we look back on our history, we see that we have shifted our lens over time. In the end, I had to decide in my choice between my two mentors that I was going to go with the dialectical model because for me, history is a living thing. There is no point studying history if it's in the past. We study history so that we can bring it forward into dialogue and conversation with this present. Tonight, we are honoring 65 years of stories, and in honoring them, we see how those stories not only have changed, but how they have changed us. Our interpretation of our stories change. As we have engaged a decolonizing lens at Renison, there's much in our stories that look very different to us than they would have looked 65 years ago. Yet in the spirit of living history, we embrace the history, because contained within the seeds of history is the possibility through knowing and engagement, the possibility of change, the opportunity for creating new forms in ways which not only frame new modes of interpretation, but new ways of being for all of us. I thought that tonight, on our 65th anniversary Founders Day, I would choose a voice from history which has really stood the test of time very well and whose words speak to me as much tonight as I believe they did to our founders 65 years ago. What is this voice I summon from the past? the story. When I began my work as president, then principal of Renison a decade ago, there was only one remaining living founder. His name was Harvey Southcott. He was a lovely man with a beautiful spirit. He loved Renison. Harvey was an Anglican priest, long retired by the time I met him. He had been the youngest member of the group of founders of the original Vision group. Carolyn Tanswell, Court's predecessor, and I visited Harvey several times in my early years here. He even managed to attend a Founders Day or two before his mobility impeded that for him. But the story I'd like to share tonight of Harvey is the night I first met him. Carolyn and I were having dinner with him at an Italian restaurant in the Byward Market. I was surprised. I was nervous about what it would mean for me coming here to Renison being an Anglican priest, because even then, a decade ago, everything was in a change time. I was shocked because he was so excited that Renison had appointed an Anglican priest, a theologian, to the principal's chair, the very first in decades. He wanted to talk theology. He knew he could do that. He wanted to talk theology. And when he was trying to express his understanding of the original vision of Renison, he referred to a theologian who has long been a favorite of mine, and it turns out of his, Irenaeus, a 2nd century thinker. He said, "Do you remember what Irenaeus said? The glory of God is creation fully alive." Yes, Harvey, I remember. He went on, "That's what I was thinking all those years ago when we imagined Renison. Try something new, do something new. No seminary, no theological school, but a new thing, a college for anybody who wanted to make a difference, who were trying to help something grow, who were trying to help something live. People live, our societies thrive through education. Let it live." That's what I thought. That's what we thought. A line of wisdom from a man born in what we now know as Turkey in the 2nd century, born again in a small group of visionaries in the 1960s Southern Ontario context we still inhabit. Those visionaries who worked to make this college here on campus a new thing in the context of a new university, which also had a new idea about how education should be done in pursuit of changing what was needing to be changed in this world. Then that idea, born again, in 2001 in an Ottawa restaurant in the mouths of one of our founders, and then born again here as we gather up all the stories, all of its 65 years, our 65 years, with all of its complexity and all of its beauty, that wisdom weaves itself here. Let it live. Help it live. Let's do something. So our societies, our creaturely companions, our planet can live. Zed Coelum Solum, one sky over all. As we turn tonight to honor our award winners, we understand that they have been chosen because their lives and their work embody this vision that lies at the very heart of our constant and yet changing story. Let us lift them up. John, Narose, Ajiri, Ora, tonight we lift you up as beacons of this college's original vision and of our hope that education empowers us to make a difference. Help it live. May it live. May we all live. We thank you for your witness to this meaning in our shared story. We thank you for your embodiment of this hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. I remember us going to Harvey's funeral in Ottawa. It was very moving. It is now my honor to invite John Neufeld to provide our keynote address. More of John's incredible accomplishments will be provided during the Honorary Senior Fellow presentation. John is the Executive Director of the House of Friendship, and in addition to being a graduate of Renison, John and the House of Friendship have a long history of providing valuable educational placement opportunities for Renison students for over 2 decades. Please welcome John to the podium.
Good evening. Let's try that again, folks. Good evening. The world needs a little more Renison. A little more on that. But first, I want to share with you a bit of error in judgment that I made last week. I thought it would be a good idea to share with our 18-year-old daughter about tonight and that I'm receiving the Senior Fellow. And without skipping a beat, with it not even taking a second, she said, "Oh, Dad, that's so vile. Who are the people that made that decision? And what criteria did they use to make that decision?" So if any of you here are worried that this is going to get to my head or this is going to be an ego, the award later, please be assured that our dear daughter, Michaela, is here tonight, and we'll make sure that doesn't happen. And for those of you who did select me, if you could introduce yourself at the end of the night so that she could be introduced to the brilliance that you are, that would be great. I thought tonight would also be appropriate to make a confession, something I haven't shared with anyone, I don't think, or definitely not publicly after 30 years. Now you're getting nervous, aren't you? When I landed on the doors of Renison almost 30 years ago, I actually didn't know what a social worker was. I had never met one. I didn't know this is a career that you could have in this field. So how did I get here? Well, I was finishing up a theology degree in Winnipeg, and someone who graduated the year ahead sent us a letter. Yes, a letter. No emails, no Instagram, an old-fashioned letter, and said, "Hey guys, I stumbled upon this great program at University of Waterloo. It's the social development studies. It integrates psychology, sociology, social work." And I thought, well, I know what sociology is. I know what psychology is. That's 2 out of 3. And, but it was his next sentence in the letter that captured my imagination and inspired my heart. It said, "And the program isn't too hard." And I thought, perfect, that's where I'm going, and sent my application in. And Renison truly changed my life personally and professionally. On a personal note, it was here at Renison that just down that hallway that I would just hope on that Tuesday morning class, a young lady by the name Andrea would be in that class. And so I would like slink down the hall and awkwardly slow down and try to catch her eye. And normally she wouldn't notice me. But this one morning, I did this awkward look and she caught my eye and I gave her this awkward smile and she smiled back. And it was like the suns opened up, the clouds moved. And I'm incredibly grateful that 27 years later, Andrea's still with me. So there's a little Renison romance story for you to kick off the night. But professionally, what was the gift that Renison gives so many of us who have the privilege of studying here? And so what I did is I actually went back, found my word processor files, and converted them from dinosaur age to Word, and the technology worked. And I actually went through a lot of my assignments, read the papers, and so I want to just share a few excerpts from some of those assignments. So what is the point of all this education anyways? This is a question that I have often reflected on, especially during times of stress. What have I learned and what purpose does this higher education serve? Although very frustrated with university at times, I have really come to appreciate the knowledge it has given me. One theory that has assisted me in appreciating higher education is Plato's allegory of the cave. I believe that if understood properly, Plato's theory could be useful to other frustrated university students. From a different class, the Hobbesian and Marxist models of human nature and their implications for criminality. Here's the question that we were tasked with. Is human naturing a smoldering set of tension-filled relations that periodically erupt into conflict, or is it an integrated and coordinated whole typified by consensus on values and beliefs? The consensus-conflict dichotomy is centuries old. From ISS 320R, Critical Encounter with Human Nature. This is my favorite. Can one truly acquire tranquility in the midst of an anesthetic society striving to engineer perfection while it bleeds uncontrollably from all the suffering and injustices within it? Let me read that one to you again. Can one truly acquire tranquility in the midst of an anesthetic society striving to engineer perfection while it bleeds uncontrollably from all the suffering and injustices within it? Now I get it for the students here, and maybe current students or those that just recently graduated. We just did these assignments to get the marks and get the degree and just to move on. But it's interesting reflecting back 30 years later to realize how the time at Renison has shaped us, how it has prepared us to address the complex and diverse world that we live in today. I think of Jim Collins' research on leadership, and Jim says, best leaders are really good at holding two seemingly opposite things in the mind at the same time. And he's riffing off F. Scott Fitzgerald's famous quote of, the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. I believe this is what Renison is, the gift that it gives to its students, and that what the profs sort of give us. When I think about the mission of Renison, fostering an inclusive community of learners empowered through excellence in teaching and scholarship to contribute positively in a diverse and complex world. Although we are technologically advancing at breakneck speeds, we are not keeping up in our common humanity. The world needs a little more Renison. So how do we meet the moment of our complex world? It is something I've been grappling with and thinking about in the context of serving at House of Friendship and the realities of mental health, addiction, poverty, and homelessness in our own community, abroad. And I've done a lot of thinking about taxi drivers. My empathy has grown for them immensely. And I want us for a second just to think about the taxi driver whose life was going along okay, working day and night, working really hard, providing for their family, hoping that maybe they could send their kids off to Renison someday. And then all of a sudden Uber shows up and it completely changes everything. And all of a sudden one's livelihood is challenged, one's ability to maybe provide. And everything is flipped upside down in that moment. And you know you can never go back to the past. It will never be the way it was. But you don't know what the future holds. And so you're in this in-between space, and it's a scary space to be in. And I believe many of us are in that space currently. When I speak to leaders of all different kinds of sectors, I clearly hear that everyone's had a bit of an Uber moment in their sector. If I think about the education space, whether it's AI, online learning, funding models. Recently, I had the privilege to spend a few hours with all the CEOs of the YMCAs, and I said, what's your Uber? Without a second, they said Peloton. They said the pandemic, people are just not coming back. Many of our YMCAs are located in downtown locations throughout our province, and the issue of homelessness is impacting them in ways that it didn't before. What about in my world? I thought about shortly after graduating from Renison, I had the privilege of working in a shelter in Toronto with youth. And I think about that experience, and I never dealt with overdoses, I never dealt with death. If I have to be fully honest with you, I could read the paper really casually and really nicely for most of the shift and without too much interruption back in the day. I compare that to what some of our Renison grads, some of the realities that they're facing in the work worlds that they're coming into these days. And it's just a very different world. For us, synthetic drugs is our Uber. What synthetic drugs have done, our own community across this great nation of ours, has put us in a place where we know we can never go back to the way it was. Simply providing a shelter where you provide a bed and a meal is not the way to address homelessness anymore. But moving forward, we're not quite sure what the future looks like. And so what do we do? What do you and I do when we're in that middle in-between space? I wish I could give you the easy answer. The only thing I do know is we can't sit still. We have to give ourselves the grace to acknowledge the complexity and the challenges, but I do know that innovation is the way forward. Trying things, breaking things, failing, learning, but adding new data to the equation is the way forward. And so I'm grateful that Renison gave me that ability to hold things that seem contradictory or opposing and hold that tension and yet not be immobilized from moving forward. When I think about the founders 65 years ago, I believe they knew that society would continue to change, to evolve. But the principle of caring for one's neighbor, that principle does not change and holds throughout. But what that looks like in today's context is different than what it did 10 years ago, 50 years ago, 65 years ago. I think about 85 years ago in the Great Depression here in our own community. It was a small prayer group of women who came together and started to see homelessness for the first time on our streets. And that was the founding of House of Friendship. It was this radical act of gracious hospitality that today allows House of Friendship to serve 42,000 people throughout Waterloo region. It was because a few folks tried something different. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. In the pandemic, some of you heard that the way we address homelessness had to radically shift and change. If you would have told me 3 years ago, we'd be buying a hotel, converting it into a 100-bed hospital here in Waterloo, just down the street, I would have laughed at you. But in today's context, caring for people experiencing homelessness with profound mental health and addictions requires us to do things differently. Providing a mat and a meal doesn't cut it anymore. We have to have a building where we have on-care health facilities, a 24/7 safe use space, not things I could have ever just imagined just a few years ago. But that is what we have to do. And I believe this is what the education that Renison provides for its students. And I hope that we can continue that legacy that the founders so wonderfully shaped for us 65 years ago. To the students, recent grads, those in the Renison program, you're going to have your Uber moments. And I'm not talking about getting from point A to point B. It's those moments where your world gets rocked personally and professionally. But my hope is that you take the values of Renison and you bring them to this complex world. I leave you with my favorite quote from the book Onward that hangs above my monitor to keep me grounded and remind me. Grow with discipline. Balance intuition with rigor. Innovate around the core. Don't embrace the status quo. Find new ways to see. Never expect a silver bullet. Get your hands dirty. Listen with empathy, and over-communicate with transparency. Tell your story, refusing to let others define you. Use authentic experiences to inspire. Stick to your values. They are your foundation. Hold people accountable, but give them tools to succeed. Make the tough choices. It's how you execute that counts. Be decisive in times of crisis. Be nimble. Find truth in trials and lessons in mistakes. Be responsible for what you see, hear, and do. Believe. The world needs a little more Renison. Thank you.
Well, thank you, John. That was really inspiring to hear your story. And I think we do need more Renison. Thank you. Before we get started with our honorees this evening, I'd just like to take a moment to thank all of our sponsors who have contributed to making tonight a success. You will find all of these on the online auction. These are folks who just generously provided some excellent materials for us to raise money for our students tonight. Please join me in thanking Together We're Bitter, or TWB Co-op Brewing, the Grand Philharmonic Choir, Waterloo Region Museums, the National Ballet of Canada, Drayton Entertainment, Kitchener Rangers, Amazing Co., Renaissance Food Services Manager and Chef Tim Farley, Lost Aviator Coffee, Wordsworth Books, Hamilton Forge Football Club, Wendy Fletcher Originals, Niagara Parks, Flat Rock Cellars, Sean and Ed or Shed Brewing Company, Center in the Square, Renison University College, the W Store at the University of Waterloo, Putticombe House, and Brenda Maciel. I will just remind you the auction is open until 9 p.m. Thank you to everyone who has bid on the auction item tonight. And just a reminder that those proceeds are going to students first. And speaking of our amazing students, and I feel badly when I gave an overview of the evening, I neglected to mention that we have Wallace Zhang, Renison peer leader and resident, who is going to come up and share a little bit about her story and her time here at Renison. Please welcome Wallace.
Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here tonight and share with you my story. So my university journey began as a BASE student. BASE is an English language program for students at Renison who want to study at the University of Waterloo, but need additional support to meet the language requirements for the university. So initially, I view it as a means to complete my English courses, with little awareness of the depth of experiences it would offer. Little did I know, Renison would become the cornerstone of profound friendships, transformative experiences, and unparalleled personal growth. So throughout my time as a BASE student, I had the privilege of interacting with peers from diverse backgrounds from the world. Some of them from Ecuador, Panama, Japan, South Korea, and various provinces of China. Over the 4 months, we laughed, we learned, and we built lasting relationships. Despite some friends have moved away for work or study now, we still keep in touch, sharing our updates and maintaining the bond that we formed at Renison. The BASE peer leaders played a pivotal role in my journey at that time, guiding me through the transition to university life with enthusiasm and support. Thanks for them, I discovered numerous opportunities on the main campus, from sports activities to academic workshops, which now I become the executive of the UW Tennis Club and one of the leadership program facilitators at Student Success Office. Their mentorship and friendship not only prepared me for my first university term, but also instilled in me a sense of curiosity. Equipped with this mindset, I explored various resources and opportunities on the main campus throughout my undergraduate years. Volunteering at open house events, participating as campus ambassador in campus incubators, and completing co-op jobs enriched my university experience and allowed me to connect with incredible staff and students. Inspired by the impact of Renison on my life, I made a decision to give back to the community as an ELI peer leader. ELI stands for English Language Institute last year. This role not only allowed me to support fellow students, but also provided a platform to share my passion for Renison and the University of Waterloo. It has been an incredibly rewarding journey, as exemplified by a student from South Korea, who was inspired by my example. She said that I have set such a good model as a peer leader, and what I did with her group really inspired her. And right now, she's working in a similar peer leader role in her country and her university, supporting other international students who visit. I'm proud of her, and I'm also proud of myself. Maybe you don't believe it, but I couldn't have imagined saying, I am proud of myself 4 years and 8 months ago. Due to my culture, we tend to be more reserved and hesitant to acknowledge our own achievements. However, Renison has changed me. I am now much more confident compared to years ago. This newfound confidence has changed my life. I'm thrilled and proud to face challenges that the future holds. Reflecting on my transformation, I'm grateful for the unwavering support of the Renison community. They have not only helped me to achieve my goals, but also instilled in me a newfound confidence. Renison is more than just an institution. It is a warm and supportive community that I proudly call home. As I move forward, I carry with me the lessons learned and the friendships made at Renison. It has been a place of healing, growth, and endless opportunities. I'm forever grateful for the experiences and impact it has had on my life. Thank you, Renison, for being my home away from home.
Whoa, thank you, Wallace. I'm always profoundly humbled by the quality of students that are attracted to study at Renison, and Wallace is no exception. Thank you for sharing your story with us. The auction remains open. I know I'm going to go back and bid a bit more. We do need a little more at Renison. Founders Day has traditionally been a day to celebrate our community and members of our community who have made considerable contributions to Renison, its mission, goals, and values. The Renison's Board and Governance Committee has the responsibility for approving and finalizing the recipients of Renison honors. And I know that again this year, there were many excellent candidates and the committee had a difficult time in narrowing the field to the final selections. Just before we get started bestowing the honors, I do want to let everyone know that while we take a few photos of the honors being bestowed, we have set up an area for group photos at the end of the evening. I'll now ask Christina Llewellyn, Professor in Social Development Studies, to present our first honor for young alumni.
Thank you very much, Court. I'm hoping that Aura Startup is here. Oh, you're here. Yay. Come on up, please. Have a spot marked, please. It is my absolute pleasure this evening to award Aura Startup with Renison University College's Young Alumni Award. I have the honor of presenting this award on behalf of Dr. Jason Blockhouse, who was the original nominator, but who could not be with us this evening, but I think is joining us online. Aura was one of our best and brightest undergraduates, completing her BA honors in social development studies. She was also one of the most outstanding research assistants to faculty, including with me. We have actually co-authored 3 articles, 2 of which are currently under review, and 1 will soon be off to a publisher. She is smart, collaborative, justice-centered, and shows unparalleled commitment to her work. Faculty were regularly taken off guard when we discovered that she actually read far more of our published work than any of our colleagues did. Aura did not find her niche at first. Having tried genetics, also business, before finding a place of belonging in the social development studies program. As a member of several equity-deserving groups that are highly underrepresented in higher education and most professions in this country, a first-generation Muslim woman student, Aura is acutely aware that education and its educators must seek truth, think critically, love knowledge, and respect the inherent dignity of all persons as moral agents. Aura's calling is to transform education systems, particularly for members of marginalized communities, in ways that enrich our collective human rights and enable us all to live just futures. And she is living this calling. She recently completed a Master of Arts in Social Justice and Community Engagement at Wilfrid Laurier University, and is now enrolled in her PhD in the Faculty of Education at York University, studying the work of restorative justice practitioners for anti-racism education. But always more than study. Aura lives out her research as a change maker. For example, she has been dedicated to developing culturally responsive mental health initiatives and to creating leadership opportunities for Muslim youth. This work includes as co-executive director of Hear Me Out Suicide Prevention Initiative, a chapter lead for Jack.org's organizing mental health events, and as a youth leader for Muslim Social Services and the Islamic Center of Cambridge. Aura exemplifies all of our dreams for alumni. That is to strive to make a real difference in the world. She is an inspiration to all those around her because of her passion for learning, her faith in human potential, and her commitment to maximizing opportunity for all as a matter of social justice. Please join me in congratulating Aura Startup on being this year's recipient of the Young Alumni Award.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you, Wendy, and congratulations, Aura. I am honored to recognize Ajuri Ogena Evi, class of 2011, as one of our distinguished alumni this evening. This was my nomination, but it was supported by Shella Zagata, MSW Program Manager, and Nancy Schnarr, Communications Manager. Ajuri Ogena graduated from Renaissance SDS and BSW programs. She went on to earn her Master of Social Work from Western University. Ajuri Ogena gives generously of herself to the broader KW community, both through her professional activities and through her volunteer services. She is the Executive Director of Kind Minds Family Wellness, a nonprofit organization in KW committed to Afrocentric, culturally grounded counseling, education, employment, and research advocacy that addresses anti-Black racism and systemic oppression. She is an independent consultant for the Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children. She is a community engagement analyst for the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies and a part-time faculty member at Wilfrid Laurier University. She also works in her spare time as a field instructor for Renison, helping to shape and mentor our future graduates. She was nominated by a student for the Field Instructor of the Year award. While not selected, the very compelling student submission letter was an incredible part of this process in selecting her for this evening. Please join me in congratulating Ajuri Ojeni Evi. Congratulations. I would now like to invite Christine Gillies, English Language Institute lecturer, to the podium to present our second Distinguished Alumni Award.
Thank you, Court. I'm really excited to be able to recognize this next person. He was a student in the English Language Institute. It feels like a long time ago now. And often they come and they go. You know, they're there sometimes short times, sometimes a little bit longer. But with Noraz, I was able to keep in touch over the years and just follow his career professionally, and occasionally talk and hear, you know, more about his personal life and his growing family and those sort of things. And I always thought it'd be so nice to tell everybody what he's doing. And now I can, now we can. So now we're able to do that through this nomination. So I really am really honored to be able to recognize him. Noraz has become an internationally recognized composer. After arriving in Canada as a refugee in 2010 from Kurdistan, he had exactly $200 in his pocket. And now his accomplishments are known globally, locally and globally. He is the epitome of strength of the human spirit. He's also happens to be really incredible testament to the quality of education and the language training and the community that we offer here at Renison in the English Language Institute. And I think this helps our staff and our instructors in the English Language Institute to understand that our work is also really equally impactful and important to, I guess, as both sides of the house, both sides of the programs that we offer. In addition to his impressive musical accomplishments, he has gone on to earn a master's degree at Wilfrid Laurier, and he is currently working on a doctorate also from Wilfrid Laurier in the music department. Now, unfortunately, Noraz is unable to join us tonight, but his son Tristan is going to accept the award on his behalf. Thank you, Chair.
I think I see a future Renison grad. Okay. I would now like to invite Christina Montero, Vice President Academic and Dean, to the podium to present our Honorary Senior Fellow for this evening.
John, I know you were already up here giving a beautiful keynote address, but perhaps you can join me here so that you can be honored and the world can see you. I'm grateful that The world needs Renison, and I'm grateful that you are part of Renison and are part of Renison. This final honor this evening we have is to bestow the designation of Honorary Senior Fellow, which is Renison's equivalent to an honorary doctorate. It's a huge honor. This honor is granted to individuals who have distinguished themselves in the wider community through significant contributions to Renison, the University of Waterloo, the Anglican Church, and the wider Kitchener-Waterloo community and the world. Tonight, I'm pleased to announce that the recipient of this distinction is John Neufeld, Executive Director of the House of Friendship and proud Renison alum. House of Friendship is a Waterloo Region-based nonprofit organization that provides food, housing, addiction treatment, and neighborhood support to individuals and families within Waterloo Region. John says that when he began social development studies at Renison, he really didn't know much about social work, as you articulated earlier, but that you were fascinated with psychology and learning about what makes people tick. He once said that Renison was foundational to his future in the field of social work. John graduated from Renison's Social Development Studies program in 1996 and went on to earn his Master of Social Work from the University of Toronto and his Master of Business Administration from Wilfrid Laurier University. He started his social work career in child welfare before being drawn to roles where he could affect change on a larger scale. He's been the executive director of the House of Friendship since 2009. John and the House of Friendship continue to play a significant role in the life of Renison by offering placement opportunities for 4 to 5 Renison students per year, a practice which has been in place for well over 20 years. John, please accept our congratulations with this honorary distinction award. And Wendy, if you could come and join to give John this award.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Wendy. Congratulations again, John. And congratulations to all of our honorees. It is getting close to 8 o'clock. I will just do a reminder that after we finish up here, the sun has now gone down. It's much easier to see everyone. We do have refreshments set up in the Great Hall Extension. So we do invite everyone to come and enjoy some additional food and beverages and meeting with everyone after we finish the official session for this evening. And that would close down the, unfortunately, those of you joining us online will not be able to participate in that portion of the evening. Before I call on Scott McLeod, our chaplain at Renison, who will introduce Bishop Todd Townsend to provide our closing prayer this evening, I do want to take a moment to thank everyone once again who has supported the Students' First Appeal. There has been a lot of activity on the online auction tonight, so thank you. We're now over $3,000. Your generous support of Renison and our students is really greatly appreciated. Whether you support our students through the purchase of Morning Moose coffee, which is our own coffee blend, $6 of which goes to student scholarships and awards for every purchase, or through any variety of the scholarships and awards that we offer to support our students, I do want to thank you. I know that everyone in this room has been supporting Renison in some way. And we do want to just remind the honorees, if you could just stay for a few minutes for some photos before departing tonight. So Scott, if you could please join me at the podium to introduce Bishop Todd Townsend to close off the evening. Thank you.
It is my pleasure to introduce the 14th Bishop of the Diocese of Huron of the Anglican Church of Canada, the Right Reverend Todd Townsend. In some ways similar to John's story, it is always a bit of a homecoming for the Townsend family to be at Renison, as their family history also has roots in this place. Bishop Todd and Stacy, his spouse, are both alumni of Renison. And while they were students, Stacy met Todd when they were both living in residence at Renison. Assuming that if you look across, you can see one or both of the floors that Todd would have lived on in his time here. The connections are not just in this place, but in relationships as well. While a seminary student at Huron College, one of Bishop Townsend's professors was the Reverend Dr. Wendy Fletcher, who would go on to become Renison's principal and then president. After living at Renison and completing undergraduate studies at Waterloo, Todd went on to pursue divinity studies at Huron College, and then ordination and parish ministry in the Diocese of Huron, while teaching theology at Huron College. Bishop Townsend went on to earn a doctorate of theology at Wycliffe, and then offered leadership as the Dean of Theology at Huron College, before being chosen as the 14th Bishop of the Diocese of Huron. He has always been a great champion for social justice and equitable change, values that Renison holds very dear. And so it is most appropriate that in celebrating Founders Day, Bishop Townsend, whose foundations are one with this college, should offer up our closing prayer. Please join with me in welcoming Bishop Todd.
Thank you, Scott. As Scott has said, I'm not just the visitor here. I've also been a resident here and have had over half of Renison's history, a connection to the place and an appreciation for the kind of blessings that it's brought to me. And I know that all of you, maybe at different points in your life as well, and therefore in different ways, have a connection to Renison and the people here. So in closing, if you're a praying person or if you're not, I invite you to take a moment to offer thanksgiving and mutual blessing for the relationships and the community that this Renison College is. Gracious and merciful God, creator of all that is, we give thanks for this particular learning community of Renison. We give thanks for the various histories, past, present, and future. And we ask for your blessing on people who are present and away, who call this place home. May we be steadfast in faith, joyful in hope, and untiring in love all the days of our life. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Bishop. So that concludes the formal part of the evening. Again, we do have refreshments in just beside what we call the Great Hall, the Great Hall Extension. And we do hope that you'll be able to stay and have some refreshments with us and share some more stories. I think one day we'll have to have a reunion of just the people who found their spouses at Renison. I think we'll have a full house. I hear these stories so often. So thank you again. And again, just a reminder for those honorees and their families, if you would just hold back for a minute, we'll get a few photos taken and then join the rest for refreshments. Thank you so much and have a good evening.